Hello and welcome back to the NuclearCraft mod spotlight. I actually recorded another like half of this, but I don't even know where the footage went. But I know exactly what I did in that other half, so I'm just going to basically do it again. Last time we had a look at the machines, we had a look at the ores and stuff, we basically had a look at all the basic stuff, we looked at the reaction generator, we looked at all this stuff. There's actually been a couple of updates to the mod since last time. First of all, the configs actually work now. Before the configs just didn't work. For some reason, they just weren't working. Something to do with the fact that there was space in the name of the config folder and the files, so they weren't being read properly. But now you can actually use the configs properly. Another thing that happens that you'll see in a minute is that something happens when you place the fission reactor down, because people were saying that it's quite hard to understand how to build the fission reactor, which we're going to build now. And basically a couple other recipe changes, bugs and tweaks, and a couple other different things. One thing that I did actually notice in these fuels is that this information is actually slightly wrong. I forgot to update this. This is already fixed in a version that's going to come out after this. But you'll notice that it says power 120 RF per tick. That's not actually right. All of these values have been increased by like 250%. So if we look at the actual values here, I only put the values in the actual fuel. You can see here power 300 per tick. So need to update that, and I already have, and that will be in the next version. So the current version at the moment is 0.0.0.8b, just in case it has updated since this video goes out. Okay, so let's get on to this stuff. We need to start building the fission reactor. Now you can see all this stuff in my inventory. All this stuff actually requires the heavy-duty workspace. I can't remember if I showed this last time, but basically the heavy-duty workspace, the recipe for this thing is some lead plating and some tough alloy. Lead plating again is lead and coal dust, and the tough alloy is made using, I think the recipe's changed for this as well, tough alloy dust, which is made with copper, tin, silver, bronze, universal reactant, lead, iron, and redstone, and you get 4 of them. And you smelt that up into tough alloy, and you can then use this in your recipes. Okay, so all the recipes are in here. The reactor casing, which is obviously the casing to your reactor, is tough alloy and lead plating in that shape. The nuclear furnace, which we had a look at before, is some lead plating like this. Fuel cells like this, blah, blah, blah. So all the recipes you can find in here. So we need to make the fission controller. So the fission controller just gets placed down in the world anywhere you want. So I'm going to actually put it 1 block higher. I'm actually going to change the shape of the fission reactor because I don't really like it that much. So I'm going to change it to a more rectangular shape. At the moment you'll see it's a sort of spherical shape, but you'll put it down here, and you'll see that you'll get a thing here saying click here to see how the multi-block reactor is built. So you can click here and it will tell you can go to this website. It's just a Dropbox link. It just goes to a picture, a bitmap file that just gives you a picture, just a little sort of graph of how to draw it, a little sort of flow chart of the stages in building it. But I'm just going to show you right now how to build it. So now that you've got your fission controller down, it will say in here, reactor incomplete, 0 RF, 0 fuel, 0 heat, no fuel. If you've got NEI installed, you can see all the different fuels and how they can be used in the fission reactor. Pretty simply, just place it in. If you notice in my inventory, these are the 3 types of fuel we had last time: the low-enriched uranium, high-enriched uranium, and thorium-bred uranium. So we can get that from the basic stuff that we mine in the ground. And from the depleted cells that we'll get from the reactor, we're going to get all these different types of other cells that we can use. So basically, a bit of warp there. So basically, we can get these other types of fuels, which can be slightly more efficient than the first 3. So all we have to do is start building the reactor. So the first thing we want to do is build a column of 5 of these fuel cell compartments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then what we want to do is around the middle here, we want to build 8 in a circle around it. There we go. And then we want to build a slightly bigger circle around here, bigger square. Now this step is a little bit annoying, so basically what you have to do here is have a little sort of dink in the side. So it's a little bit of a weird shape, as you can see already. It's starting to look a little weird. But basically this is the shape at the moment. It will probably change in the very near future. But there you go, there's the next stage. The next stage after that is the same as the one before. Oh, hang on, what's happened here? Oh yeah, and also these corners need to do. Okay, there you go, that's the shape. And then the next bit on top I've just realised that these corners actually aren't needed. If they're not actually making up the internal walls, then you don't need them. So there we go. And finally, on top, you've got this little bit again. And then on top, you finish off. At the moment, you'll still see it says reactor incomplete, and then we can just finish off right at the top. And finally, once you've done that, you should see fission reactor. So now we can use it. We can start putting stuff in it. And we can start actually generating some power. Before we do that, we probably want to get ourselves some conduits. We'll just get some conduits from conduit. We'll get some from Ender.io, because Ender.io is pretty good. We want a power monitor to just see how much power we're generating. And we also want to get some capacitors. Okay, so what we want to do is pretty simple. Let's just get some conduits coming out of this thing. They just connect like normal. So the power monitor wants to go sort of here, just so the power monitor doesn't sort of muck with the whole system. I'm going to put that there. I'm also going to make sure that this is in extract mode. If you do that, then you make sure that the power monitor doesn't actually interfere with this network, so we can actually measure properly how much power it's generating. And then we just put that down there. So this thing will basically just work out how much power is being produced. So it's just a way of seeing how much power is being produced. Okay, so fission reactor. Pretty simple. You just put a cell in. So let's just put our basic LEU-235 cell in. Doop. And notice that we get 7.2 million fuel units. Now, all of them will actually give you 7.2 million fuel units. So don't be worried if that doesn't change. All that changes is that the different fuels, the rate at which this fuel decreases changes. So, for example, the uranium decreases at the standard rate, while thorium decreases at about a quarter of the rate, and plutonium decreases faster than the uranium. Again, all that information is in the NEI usage. But if you're not using NEI, then I'm going to work on a way for you to work out how everything works. Okay, so first of all, a lever. We need this on the side because you need to activate a redstone signal for this thing to work. And once we flip it on, you'll see the reactor starts running. And there we go. It's as simple as that. So you'll see that we've already got some fuel burn up. So you can see the fuel bar here is going down, and the fuel bar. This is another fuel bar here. So that's starting to go down. The fuel is starting to go down. So this thing will last for 1,200 seconds, which is 20 minutes-ish. It is exactly 20 minutes, actually. But you can see here also the heat is building up. So we've got to worry about the heat. I must warn you that as soon as the heat reaches 1 million, which is the top level, the reactor will explode. And it will explode pretty big. I mean, it's not massive. It's not like NuclearCraft nuclear reactors. They don't explode in quite as massive as those. But they still explode to a pretty large extent. They do explode quite largely. But you can notice that we are generating 300 RF per tick. So that's the basic amount that the LEU fuel cell generates, 300 RF per tick, as we saw before. As I said, the NEI is bugged at the moment. Not bugged, but I mucked up, so I need to fix that thing where it only says 120, but it is producing 300 RF per tick. There we go, pretty simple. Okay, so 300 RF per tick. Now, that's all well and good, but we definitely want to start thinking about cutting down on this heat. But also we want to probably make this a more efficient fuel as well. I mean, 300 RF per tick is good, but we definitely want to generate more. So if we want to generate more power without dealing with the heat, which we'll definitely have to do, we need to get ourselves some graphite. Now, graphite, pretty easy to make, just a bit of coal dust and some coal. This thing can actually be used in the furnace as well. It can smelt the same as a coal block. If you want to make your reactor a little bit more efficient, you could put a graphite block inside of it. If one graphite block is inside, and we turn this on, we'll start to notice that we're getting now 310 RF per tick. So it looks like every graphite block adds an extra 10 RF per tick to the amount that we generate, which is good, so we can just fill the whole thing with graphite blocks. But you will notice that if we do that, then something else will happen. Because graphite blocks don't just generate extra energy, they also generate extra heat, and we'll definitely see the effects of that once we fill this whole thing with graphite. So there's 28 places to put blocks, therefore we should be producing another 280 RF per tick. So let's see if that happens. Therefore we should be producing 580 RF per tick, and we are. So there we go, 580 RF per tick. But you also will notice that the heat is building a lot quicker now. It did say that LEU, if we look at the usage, produces 14 heat per tick. In the case of LEU, each graphite block adds about 4 extra heat, I think. I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but 4, I think, or maybe 8 times 28 is a lot bigger than 14. So you'll notice that the heat is starting to build up quite rapidly now. So we need to start actually worrying about that. So, I mean, even though we are producing 580 RF per tick, almost double, we've now got a bit of a problem in terms of heat. And the heat, as you can see, is not dropping off while the reactor is off as well, because, well, there's nothing cooling it down. Okay. So now we need to start using some reactor coolers. Now you can, instead of using these quite expensive reactor coolers, to be honest, you can use water, but it's about a quarter as effective. So you probably want to use the reactor coolers. One thing to note about the graphite blocks as well is that depending on the amount, on the type of fuel that's in the reactor, the graphite blocks will generate certain amounts of RF. For example, if you have uranium, obviously we saw the LEU, it generated about 10 RF per tick extra, and about 4 heat per tick extra. But if you use something like thorium, which naturally produces a lot less RF per tick, then it only makes an extra 5 RF per tick per graphite, and also generates only 2 heat per tick extra. If you use something like the plutonium, then you obviously get more per graphite. So you've got to try and experiment and see what the best setup is for the most efficient thing. So you can also notice when the reactor's incomplete, all of this stuff goes grey, just to sort of make it clear that we've definitely run out of, we've definitely not completed the reactor. But you will notice now that we're on the same amount of heat, but because I've put one coolant cell in there, coolant block, only one, I can close up the reactor and suddenly we'll start to lose heat. So you can notice here that we're losing heat at a constant rate, and it's per coolant block. No matter what the type of fuel, you will lose, when the reactor is off, 8 heat per tick. When the reactor is on, you'll lose 16 heat per tick. So keep that in mind. And the water is 2 heat per tick when off, and 8 heat per tick. 4 heat per tick when on. So you can see we're just losing heat. Now we could just leave that on, and just have a sort of redstone timer sort of setup, but obviously again we could also just fill the whole thing with reactor coolers, which is quite expensive, but it's also the most effective way to cool down your reactor very, very quickly. So basically this is the way to make the safest reactor. So you can notice now we're starting to lose heat very, very quickly, and there we are. Awesome. Very simple. So you will notice that when we turn the reactor on, you'll notice that we're still losing heat really, really very, very, very quickly. So for LEU, it's probably impractical to have that many coolant cells in there. It's just a waste. So what we want to probably try and do is work out how many coolant cells we need. So it's very simple, really. We just have to look at how much heat one of these produces. So we can produce 14 heat per tick. Now we know for a fact that each of these things, when on, decrease the heat by 16. So really, we only need one coolant cell. And that should be all we need. So now if we turn the reactor on... Oh, maybe not. maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe we need another one. There we go. So it's probably the fact that the reactor coolers... it's probably... Oh yes, because I doubled the amount of heat that these things produce, basically. So reactor coolers actually only reduce the heat by half the amount that I said. So yeah, there we go. So now you can see with two coolers, no heat. So that's pretty simple, really. But of course, we could... we want to generate more power, because right now we're only generating 300 RF per tick, so we want to add graphite. Let's add a couple more pieces of graphite. Let's just add a bit of graphite in there. There we go. But you can now see that we're generating heat again, because we've added the graphite, and each piece of graphite adds the amount of heat generated per tick. However, we are now generating more power, but now we've got the heat problem again. So now we need to go and add some more coolant cells. So let's get them. And now, hopefully, we should be down on heat again. Nice. So we're down on the negative again. That's good to see. Now we can add more graphite blocks. So this is sort of the way you can work out what the most efficient way to build your reactors are. Let's turn it on again. We're still good for heat. Let's add more graphite. Still good. Let's actually remove some of these. Are we still good now? Oh no, it's starting to generate heat again. So let's get rid of. Let's go put some coolant blocks in and put some graphite in. So hopefully this will actually be quite an efficient. Oh no, that's not what I want to put there. This should hopefully be a very efficient reactor now. Okay, no, just a little bit of heat being generated. So let's get rid of one of these and put a coolant block. Okay, maybe another one. And we should now have the most efficient and safe LEU reactor. There we go. So now we're on the down again. So it looks like the most efficient LEU reactor that I could come up with is 510 RF per tick. So that's not bad. We've nearly added about 60% on the amount of power we generate. So that's very good. That's really good to see. So yeah, we've definitely added about, I think it's probably about, 70% extra power. So we've nearly doubled it, the amount of power, by adding some graphite and some coolant blocks in the right configuration. It doesn't matter at the moment what position in the reactor it is, but I might change that, and I also might change the way that the maths is worked out. At the moment it's just per block, but I might make it so that multiple graphite blocks next to each other generate even more heat and even more energy. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what we can do. So there we go. We've now got a very efficient LEU reactor. Now obviously if you're going to use thorium, or you're going to use one of these really more expensive and powerful fuels, you're going to have to work out a better way to sort out these reactors. Just to give you a demonstration of the differences in the amount of power and heat that's generated, we'll put down instead a HEP cell. Now HEP cells are the most powerful and the most heat producing cells. They produced about 30 times more heat and produce a lot more power. They actually produce 2,700 RF per tick. So if we put one in and turn the reactor on, if we just get a lever, we turn that on, we can notice that we're starting to generate a huge amount of heat because we haven't configured the reactor properly at all. But you have also noticed that we are producing 3,540 RF per tick. So this heat is going up hugely, so we definitely want to fix that. I've worked out that for a HEP cell, you basically just want to fill the entire thing with reactor coolers. Yeah, that's something for you to do if you get this mod. One thing I want to show you is what happens when it explodes. So let's since we've got HEP in there, we're going to fill the whole thing with graphite and just see what the explosion's like. Okay, so this thing is off at the moment. That's good. So you'll notice when we've got the whole thing full of graphite and we've got the HEP cell going, the heat builds up extremely quickly, but we have enough time to quickly check over, see how much power we're generating. 3,820 RF per tick, so that's a lot of power. But at the same time, this is a lot of heat we're generating here, and you'll notice that it's getting very, very close to a million. The explosion radius is quite big. So you'll see now the reactor is about to go offline. There we are. So it is pretty big. It looks like the crusher somehow survived. That's an interesting thing to have happened. So maybe something about the blast resistance on the crusher is a little bit off. But you can see that the explosion radius is quite big. It is sand, so I guess it did go a little bit bigger than normal. But it is still quite a problem. I mean, if you have this in your base, you probably don't want it to do this much damage. So it did actually go like, a couple of blocks down into the stone. And it's got a big radius, so you definitely want to watch out. You don't want your reactor to explode, because you'll have to build all the stuff again. Any nearby machines will blow up. So it's just a bit of a pain, really. So you definitely, really, it's just as simple as making sure that your heat levels always stay at 0, really, or are always negative, always have loss. So there we go. I think that on that bombshell, it's time to end this little mod spotlight. Thank you for watching. If you want to download, link is in the description. Leave a comment on the Minecraft forum page as well, or in this video if you want to give me some suggestions and stuff. I really love having suggestions, because then it feels like I'm actually communicating with the people who are watching these videos and stuff. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time back in FTB. This has been my test world, and nuclear relativistic, not nuclear relativistics. I keep calling it that. That's the old name. It's now called NuclearCraft. So yeah, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.